Welcome. We are live. Hello. I am Sarah Harris, President and CEO of the Black Business Association. And on behalf of Women's History Month, we are proud to partner with Wendy Gladney, the Purpose Partner and the founder of Forgiving for Living. Wendy will serve as host and moderator for today's webinar, and I will turn it over to Wendy. Take it over, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We so appreciate your support and just the collaboration between the Black Business Association and all the things that we do in the community. So thank you. Okay, well, hello, everyone. This is so exciting. And so on behalf of Forgiving for Living, the Purpose Partner, and the Black Business Association, I am honored to serve as your moderator for today's webinar. The title of our webinar today is Women Helping Women Leaders Live Whole and Well by Understanding Their History. So before we begin, I'd like to express our deep gratitude to our sponsors, the James Irvine Foundation Matching and Discretionary Fund and the East Bay Community Foundation for providing the resources and space to make this important conversation possible and available. We are also especially grateful, as I already mentioned, to Sarah Harris and the BBA for hosting this webinar and for their continued leadership in advancing opportunities and support for women in our communities and actually across the state of California. And of course, I have to tell you, I am so excited about our three panelists today. We have three distinguished women who have taken time out of their schedules to share wisdom and pearls that are going to definitely make a difference in our lives. So today's guests are Dr. Antoinette Harrell, family historian and genealogist. We also have Monique A. Stennis, strategic communications and cultural leader. And we have Gladys Stennis Mixon, financial executive and expert. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Today's conversation is especially meaningful because we're also celebrating Women's History Month, a time when we celebrate the contributions of women past as well as present, and also asking a very important question today. How do we sustain the women who sustain everyone else in their lives and in our communities? Women, especially women who do work in the nonprofit world that are also in leadership, corporate, and community, often pour from themselves continuously. We advocate, we build, we nurture, we lead, we solve problems, but too often we neglect our own health and well-being. At the Purpose Partner, my mission is helping women at crossroads become unshakable and live with strategic grace. One truth I have learned over the years is that we cannot lead. We cannot lead well if we're not well. We cannot pour from an empty vessel. And we cannot change the world if we've lost our own selves in the process. Understanding our personal and family history, including our medical history, cultural legacy, and lived experiences can empower us to make healthier decisions, advocate for ourselves, and build sustainable leadership lives. So today, we are exploring how knowledge of where we come from can help determine how we move forward physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So I would like to start with our first panelist, Dr. Antoinette Harrell. Would you please take a moment and just share with our audience today a little bit about who you are and how you got into the work that you're doing today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me as a guest on the Purpose Partner. I started 36 years ago researching my family history because of my mother. My mother would always tell me the same stories no matter how many times I phoned her in a day. And it evolved into something so profound, finding myself. And I'm so happy for this topic today because we'll be talking about something that they did not include in the family history, and that was talking about the medical history. And, we know every time we go to a new doctor, the first thing they want you to do is fill out some forms on medical history. And that history, I wish that my family would have discussed more with me. And I want to be the change breaker by saying, you know what, we have to be inclusive to medical family history as well. So thank you.
No, that is wonderful. So let me ask you before we even go to our next guest, with the work you're doing, you've kind of shared how you got into it, but tell me just a little bit more about how you are helping others with that. Like, for example, do you write papers? Do you write books? I mean, like, just because this is such an important topic.
Well, the first thing I had to do was find records. And a lot of those records happen to be death certificates. And on those death certificates and studying and tracing a trail, I really found some genetic health issues that was passed down from generation to generation. And so in sharing those documents with my family, it opened up broader discussions where they felt, okay, I'm facing that right now. Or my mother had those same issues and we didn't know. So those debt records really was the, I would say, the catalyst that opened up the way to say, hey, because oftentimes families are very private with that type of information, especially in the older generation. It was like, we don't want to talk about it, or for some reason they didn't talk about menopause, health conditions. You knew they were sick, but they just didn't tell you what they was facing. So I would like to say that the records themselves open up that conversation and that dialogue. And as the generations move forward, more younger people behind that generation I was looking at, they didn't feel the same way. They wanted to discuss what was going on with their health and see how could those records and that information help them.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're
Uh,
quite welcome.
Monique, may we turn to you, please? And would you share about the work that you do and even how you even came here today?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Monique Stennis. I am a communications professional, author, and educator whose work focuses on personal branding, leadership, and community success, community engagement. I'm the author of Truly You, Your Brand's Pathway to Success, and much of my work centered on how identity and lived experiences shape how we lead and how we show up in the world. It's such an honor to be here. I chose to participate in this conversation because I believe our stories and our histories are powerful teachers, point blank. When women share those experiences with one another, we create a space for healing, learning, and supporting the next generation of women leaders.
So,
I think that's so wonderful. And the other thing that I think is so important when you talk about us sharing our stories is that we start to see some of the similarities, you know, that sometimes some of us have when we think that we're in silos and that we're all by ourselves and, you know, nobody would understand this. And when you listen and hear and read other people's stories, it's very, very encouraging. So I thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Okay, Miss Gladys Dennis, we're going to move over to you. Could you share a little bit with us about your work and what you're doing?
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you for having me and being a part of this great panel. I'm in the finance accounting side of the business and have worked for many years in the entertainment business, and I'm still in that business on the finance and accounting side. However, I have met with and work with various young people that are coming into the business and are trying to figure out how to survive and maneuver the business just because of all the corporate changes and challenges that are occurring. And so as a result of that, as many of you know, such programs as DEI and all like that are falling by the wayside. So now we have to come out and properly reinvent the wheel so that we can still stay in the playing game.
So also share with me a little bit of what motivated you to want to share your story today or to share information for those that will be watching.
Well, I wanted to share my story because I'm seeing so many people, particularly that have come behind me, of various ethnicities that are really struggling trying to survive in the corporate game. And so through the assistance of colleagues of mine that are still in the business, that are in senior management levels, they have expressed to me now what they're looking for based on the recent changes over the last year. And so as a result of that, I felt, and after, talking with Monique and some others, that maybe this story may be helpful for people moving forward and trying to sustain themselves in the business, particularly coming out of undergrad, grad, and even PhD programs if they're in it, and being able to properly communicate, because so much is affecting the business game, particularly with AI.
So true. So true. Thank you so much, Gladys. Okay, we're going to go back now to Dr. Harrell. Dr. Harrell, your work focuses, we know, on history and heritage and legacy. And I'm a strong component, a person who supports legacy. Can you share why it is really important for us to understand our family history? And as you mentioned before a little bit, especially around medical issues, why is that so much important today?
I think understanding the family history and learning about my family history really opened me up to understanding myself, to learn about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to learn about myself in every aspect of my life, I had to look at the family history. I had to look at especially that female line, because some things we inherit and we really do not know, what it is. You think that you're just going through this change, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that really helped me to understand the female history is similarities,
Yes.
especially at this point in my life. You know, knowing that the medical history was really, if I say everything that I found, discovering that was the most, because I'm facing some of those challenges right now myself.
Mm-hmm.
And let me say, my mother had a aneurysm in the head about 25 years ago. Well, 18 years ago, I had the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And through family history, I learned that my father also had that. So,
Wow.
what did that do for me? It helped me to talk to my siblings. Look, you need to get your medical checkups. You need to make sure you let the doctor know that this is what's running in the family. And so, everything else was rich. The photographs was great. The documents was great. The land was great. But none of that would be good if I didn't have good help to make sure that I maintain, tell the stories in documentaries and books. If you do not have the most important thing, that's rich health. You can't do anything.
I have to agree with you, because
Mm-hmm.
for people who know me know that 2025 was a serious health challenging year for me. And I actually ended up having emergency gallbladder surgery. And then later found out that I ended up having a blood clot in my leg. And so what was interesting is I didn't know if anybody in my family had dealt with any of that. And then finally, speaking to my aunt, my biological mother's twin sister, two things I've learned: blood clots run in the family, and arthritis. And I do have arthritis. And so,
Absolutely.
but it also now helps me to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to help take care of myself? And like you said, making sure that not only my siblings, but my children and grandchildren will begin to understand what it is. So you're right. I mean, what we don't know can hurt us. Sometimes we don't want to know certain things because we're scared of the truth. We're scared of, like, oh my gosh, if I learn that, what's going to happen? But it's really ignorance that can hurt us even more than information. So thank you so much. Monique.
Yes.
As a communications and culture leader, you understand the pressures of visibility and expectations that the world puts on us, that we put on ourselves. How can personal branding create that pressure, and how might those expectations impact the health and well-being of the women that we're speaking out to today?
Absolutely. So personal branding can be empowering because you're putting yourself out there, you're telling your story. But it can also create pressure, especially for women whose visibility comes with heightened scrutiny. When we talk about personal branding, we often focus on influence and opportunity, but we don't always talk about the emotional labor behind it. For many Black professional women, maintaining a brand can feel constantly proving credibility, over preparing, over delivering, and being mindful of how every action can be interpreted. And that pressure exists within broader economic realities. For example, in 2025, Black women experienced disproportionate job losses, about 251,000 job lost in just 8 months, accounting for more than half of the job losses among women. So the stakes are high. They're real high around reputation and performance and becoming incredibly high. That's why I believe personal branding shouldn't be about performance. It should be about alignment. When your brand is grounded in your values and authenticity, it becomes a tool for clarity and well-being, not just visibility.
I'm writing notes from what you're saying. That is so good. And take it from someone like myself who's been in the public eye for a very long time. Before I had my own business, I actually was an actress and was in the entertainment industry, and years before that did modeling and all that. And I can tell you one thing that is so true, and it happens to me today. When people see my pictures on social media, or if they see me and I'm made up like this for a work day, because to me this is a work day, and then they see me with no makeup and a ponytail, they always ask me, are you okay?
Wow.
Like, they're like, are you okay? Like, Wendy, is everything okay? Are you fine? And I'm like, yes, I just don't have on any makeup today, or I just have my hair in a ponytail today. So you're right, Monique, because if you don't have a strong character and backbone, that can deflate you. That can make you feel like, oh my gosh, is my whole value based on if I do my hair and makeup? I mean, is that how you see me? Is that it? And that's why I've also gone where sometimes in my podcasts and so forth, I won't do makeup. I mean, I'll do some kind of lip gloss or whatever, but I won't do the whole shebang. And sometimes I'll wear a ponytail. And I do get people who comment on it too. They're like, oh, you didn't have time to do your hair. No, it was something I did on purpose. But that can affect your whole self-esteem, so which then deals with our health, because if we don't feel good about ourselves, we won't take care of ourselves and so forth. So you are so correct about, and all of us have a level of branding, no matter who you are and what you do. I mean, it's not just people who might be in quote unquote public life, because the first thing people always judge you by is how they see you. I mean, that's the first thing, and then they go deeper to find out what you really have to say and share. So I thank you for that, because understanding the importance also of monitoring, and as you say, not performance, but alignment when it comes to our branding.
Absolutely.
All right, Miss Gladys, it's your turn. And I want to ask you,
all right,
from your perspective in the corporate world, what pressures are women of color, particularly Black women, facing in leadership roles, and how does that pressure affect their health, both emotionally and physically?
Well, first of all, I think they are held to very high standards, depending on what area of the workforce that they are in, number one. Number two, I believe they're subordinates, because many of them, if they've gotten into mid to senior management, they could have all walks of life reporting to them, whether they're other Blacks, whites, Hispanics, etc. As a result of that, they do have a senior boss or a boss over them that is handing back and looking at them critically. And so I have found that with many women of color, particularly African American women, they have uncertainty about themselves, as well as some of them have various medical issues that come down while working in the business, from, as I call it, the big C, or cancer, to heart disease, to any of the major diseases that are out there right now. And so they also, because they're trying to survive, are not always taking care of themselves either. So as a result, if, I believe in the old saying, if there's health, if you have health, you have wealth, number
Mhm.
one.
Yeah.
And I think behaviorally, if your health isn't in part, then it does start to wear on your psychic, your mental abilities, and everything else. So it for our women, and particularly women of color, it becomes a real survival situation above and beyond what most people could ever tell you. And the other thing is, I find a fair amount of them, because they're dealing with pressure coming from their superiors, it starts affecting their physical well-being. And you see somebody that maybe first came in and was, let's say, as they say, a size 10, and then overnight they've doubled and tripled in sizes because of some of the mental and physical acumens that are occurring, that are very hard for them to fight.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about, although I've been very entrepreneurial most of my life in all the things that I've done, I do have family members who are within the corporate arena. And just to listen to some of the dialogue of the pressure that they feel like, because we are women and because we're women of color, we have to be better and do better. It's like we're judged by a
Right.
different standard. And I don't know, sometimes today, I think it could be partially self-imposed. And I think sometimes it is still society, that it's a society or societal issue. But sometimes we might even put more pressure on ourselves than what really actually exists. So,
Well, I do believe there is some of that
mhm,
wholeheartedly, but I do feel that if you're that mid manager to early tier senior management, because you have so much pressure on top of you, it just starts affecting you both physically and mentally. And so you're trying to do this whole survival of the fittest, because you've also got people that are reporting into you that are kicking upwards. You know what I mean? You're being hit on the head, and then you're being kicked from the bottom. So, um, and unfortunately, based on current economic times and political times, it's just gotten really worse.
yeah, I would totally agree. Okay, we're going to segue back over to Dr. Harrell. And a question I'd like to ask you is, can you share a personal challenge that you have faced where knowing more about your family's medical history might have helped or hurt? Either way. I mean, would you kind of share just some information about your
It
journey?
went both ways, yes. And thank you for that question too, because some people was very happy that I was doing the research. Others thought that I was going to reveal things about their life, what I found in some of my research. An example of that is in 1886, 88. My grandfather, Robert Harrell, was third great grandfather, and his son bought land. We don't know what happened to the land. I think it was taken away from him. But in 1896, Alexander's wife bought land, and I couldn't understand why she bought the land without her husband's approval in that time, or his name being on the deed. I learned that he had two families. And that was a secret in the family that some of the older people didn't want to talk about. But my mother talked about it. And I'm very grateful today for all the things that my mother shared with me. Well, everybody else didn't want that to get out. But when you think about it, when our children start to go to school with someone in the community, oh, you can't date her because she's your cousin. Well, how could that be? Because I've never known her. Well, your great grandfather had another family. So it forced it to come out. But on the other hand, I was very grateful for that, because the younger people were saying, look, what's the dark secrets? Don't hold anything from us. Tell us. But in the deep South, people kept secrets. It's just the way it was. Going back to the medical history, a lot of times we depend on midwives or those old remedies, because there was a time that they couldn't go to the doctor, especially to retrieve records. So that opened up a dialogue. It was a challenge, but over time, with my persistence, the challenge kind of like the walls started to come down, because they saw that I wasn't going anywhere.
I think,
Yeah.
I mean, as you're talking, so much is going through my brain. The first thing I wanted to comment on was the fact my maiden name is Harris. And saw my sister's name was Harris. And so my daughter married a man named Harris. But she's Gladney, but she married a Harris. And then I have a first cousin, who her last name was Magby, and she married a Harris. So my grandmother was like, wait a minute, we got to check their people, because we got to know where they came from, and we got to make sure you're not related. So my grandmother was really big about, okay, where did you come from? And you know what's really interesting about that, because I'm the family historian in our family and doing a lot of the research. And as I've gone back far and far and far and far, because I've gone back pretty far now, we're from Texas. But then I found out we were from Virginia before that, but nobody knew that because we didn't know our history. So just because somebody isn't from Texas, that's a Harris, hey, you still might have to be careful, because we have been dispersed across the diaspora when you go way back. And so you just never know. The other thing I wanted to comment about when you were talking about records and stuff, because I was very close to my grandmother, and my grandmother was first born generation free in our family. Her father was actually born, and I actually have a picture of him right here. I have a big one on the wall. But her father was actually born a slave and freed around 3 years old. And my grandmother was born at the turn of the century, around 1901. She was the first child of a second marriage, because his first wife passed away in childbirth. And so when he remarried a second time, he was in his 40s, and my grandmother's mother was 16. So big age difference, because like sometimes people start doing the math. They're like, Wendy, how is your grandmother firstborn generation free? Let me tell you. But during that time, like you said, Dr. Harrell, she wasn't born in a hospital. She was born by a midwife in a house, and a lot of the records was in the family Bible. Yes. And that's also assuming people could write, because a lot of people could read, or possibly read, but maybe not really write. So when we're checking those records of our family and trying to find out information about our family members, there are various sources that we have to make sure that we check. So I just thank you for your diligence of making sure that you're telling us, check those death certificates, check, wedding announcements, birth certificates, just the different things, going back to the churches, finding out when somebody was baptized, and, and just really trying to pull all that together. So I thank you. Okay, Monique, we're back to you. As a culture leader, working with organizations and leaders, everybody's losing a lot. I'm not sure who that is. Okay, I'm sorry. So as a cultural leader, working with organizations and leaders, what is the biggest challenge preventing women from living whole and well, in your opinion?
Ooh, in my opinion, one of the biggest challenge preventing women from living whole and well is the constant pressure to perform while navigating environments that weren't designed with them in mind. And I just want to pause for a second and just think about environments not designed with them in mind. In the interviews I've conducted with Black professional women, a consistent theme is what I've called the visibility and credibility tax. The need to over prepare, manage perceptions, and continually prove competence just to be seen as capable. That kind of sustained pressure impacts well-being. It affects how women show up, how much they rest, how much rest they allow themselves, and how safe they feel bringing their full selves to work. So the real opportunity for organizations is to create cultures where excellence doesn't require exhaustion, where women can lead, contribute, and thrive without constantly carrying the burden of proving they belong.
Wow. We had a person who said, interesting, excellent point, Rhonda Carter, who's watching right now. And that is so true, because, I mean, how many of us can really be honest and say, if somebody calls you and you're resting on the couch for a moment, it's the middle of the day, that you would actually admit that you're resting, like, yeah. Oh, no, I'm about to cook, or I'm about to go do this, or I'm about to go do that, because we have this guilt trip that we can't rest, and as I've gotten older, because now I'm in the 60s generation, halfway, that at 65, I'm going to rest if I need to. Hello, because I can't keep up the pace and the stamina that I lead on a regular basis if I don't, and I can't feel guilty about it. So I mean, and that is a tax. I mean, I wrote that down again. I mean, that is a tax that gets put on us. And again, sometimes I think that we too have to back up a little bit and make sure that we don't allow people to put external pressure on us, that as it relates to how we run our lives.
Absolutely.
So, thank you. Okay, Miss Gladys.
All right.
What practical steps do you feel that women, especially corporate women, women in leadership, can take to really take care of themselves and live whole and well within the corporate environment and still be able to achieve their goals or their desires in terms of advancement, but still really taking care of themselves?
I think the first thing that today's women need to do is work on their well-being. Okay. If that means getting up in the morning and going to the gym, because all that helps your body eliminate additional pressures that you're going to be confronted with when you go into the office, and to be able to sustain the day. The other thing I think is very helpful is you don't have to go to lunch every day with your friends and colleagues. Maybe take an hour power nap. Okay, because that rejuvenates the body and keeps it going throughout the day, whether it be short, long, whatever. Because a lot of times corporately, you don't know what you're experiencing. And those are things that are not necessarily, academic, because many of the people that are in the corporate game have met the academic criteria collegiately through any kind of certifications that they may have. But I think if they force themselves to take care of themselves while at work, during work, and then of course when they come home, I think that will sustain them as they maneuver through the various changes that occur when you're in the corporate environment.
One of the things that I think I'm hearing you also talk about, and you were saying it in a different way, but the word boundaries.
Yeah.
I think we need to have boundaries. So maybe it's like, I'll pass on lunch today so that I can go and do this over here. Somebody just put up, it's called listening to your body and being honest with yourself. Yes, it's true.
Exactly.
Sometimes we ignore. I've ignored it. I've ignored sometimes. I've got a pain, I got this, and I just keep on going until it knocks me out, and I'm on the ground. And I mean, I'm literally, that's what happened to me with my gallbladder, situation. So I think boundaries based on really for all of us, talking to the very.
And you have to listen to you have to listen to your body, because corporately you got there because you knew something. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there were situations because you got there and they needed a minority in place. I'm not saying that didn't occur, but I find in a lot of the young professionals coming up now, the mid-level professionals that are in there now, they know that they understand their job and the capabilities of their job. But like I said earlier in the previous question, because they deal with so much stress above them, on top of them, and then people working for them, pushing them the other way, the only way to survive and to sustain yourself is to get proper rest. Like I said, work out if you can, if you like to do that. And it doesn't have to be a hard workout. It can be a power walk, and then, like I said, during the workday, you don't have to go out and eat every lunch. Take a good power nap. And then the other thing I think that really helps and energizes you and gets you ready for the next day is try and get, because we don't all do it, that 6 to 8 hours of sleep per day.
Yeah. Sleep is important. And I would definitely agree with that. So thank you, Miss Gladys. Okay. Well, we're going to start looking at wrapping things up, and we're going to get some closing reflections. And ladies, I just really appreciate your wisdom, your honesty, your openness, and just sharing today. And really, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. I mean, there's just
Absolutely.
so much that can be done with this, even more so. So, as we begin to bring our webinar to a close, I'd like to invite each of you to share one final thought or message that you really didn't get to already talk about, or that you really want to emphasize even more, that you want to make sure our audience gets. And then I know that underneath each of our names has some contact information, but if you also want to verbally say it after you say your final comment, please feel free, because we want our audience to be able to find you, contact you, and just reach out to you if they feel like they could, use your services or just want to learn more or connect. So we'll start with you, Dr. Harrell.
Thank you. My closing thought would simply be this. Our family history is more than a collection of names and dates. It guides us to who we are and how we live today. Understand our family medical history is part of that responsibility. When we talk about open and being open about the illness that we face, we give our children and grandchildren information that can help them live a longer, healthier life. Reclaim that space, because all of us can be guilty of not taking care of ourselves and delaying doctor's appointments. I'm at the age now that I do not allow anything to override when I need to see the doctor, when I need to lay down and take a break. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And tell us a little bit about Untold History Foundation.
Yeah, Untold History Foundation is about all the work that I do in documenting the history of African American people in St. Helena, Tangipahoa Hole Parish, East Feliciana, and Washington Parish. So I'm very happy that those 36 years of work has been compiled in one space now that people can visit and learn about their ancestors and the history of those areas.
And that's in Louisiana.
That's in Louisiana, yes, where
Okay.
my ancestors has been since the forming of each parish.
Wow. That's really remarkable and wonderful. So again, untoldhistoryfoundation.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Miss Monique.
Hi. Thank you for having me. So after listening to dozens of Black professional women share their experiences, one thing is clear. Women are incredibly resilient, but resilience should not be the requirement for belonging. The real work ahead of organizations is creating cultures where women can bring their brilliance, their voice, and their humanity without carrying the constant burden of proving they belong. And so I've been studying personal branding for over the last 10 years, and I'm working on my second book where it is personal branding for the Black woman. And my goal is to interview 100 Black women to find out how they manage their personal brand in spaces that may not have been created for them. And so I definitely invite anyone who would like to participate to email me. And thank you.
You're welcome. And again, your email is Monique Stennis
2016. Yep. At gmail.com.
Yes. So I thank you for the work that you're doing. And like they say, we see you. So thank you for seeing us. We appreciate that. You're welcome. Miss Gladys. Your closing,
madam. Well, I know we kind of blacked out a little bit, but one thing I think after hearing all of you ladies speak, and even though my specialty is more on the corporate and finance and accounting side, everything is interwoven, okay? We can start with the doctor above. If you don't have health, you don't have wealth, and therefore you won't be able to go to work. You won't be able to sustain your job, and you will ultimately be replaced. Now, there are some legalese and laws that if you out on your back, they can't get rid of you immediately, but you can imagine when you come back what the intent is, because while you haven't sustained your health, you better believe someone is going in that office, looking around, checking to see what you did or didn't do. So that's one thing. I do think the well-being that Monique tells us is good for everybody, because that sustains you and it gives you as I call it, an oomph to continue to succeed and hopefully move up the chain and hopefully break the ceiling to get into the executive offices. So I do believe our discussion today has kind of come full circle because each area impacts the other.
And if people would like to get in touch with you, your email is gystennis127@gmail.com.
Correct.
Wonderful. And, I just want to tap a little bit real quick on what you were just saying, Gladys, and that one of the things that, we didn't really hone in on because, of course, we're limited in time. And like we said, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg is that no matter what field we're in, we're still wives, mothers, daughters, caregivers, all these different things that weave us together. That's that interwoven part that you talk about. So even if you're going to a corporate job, but if you have children at home or, you have a husband that's like, they don't care that you're the senior vice president of XYZ. They want to know what's for dinner.
Right.
Yeah, at the end of the day, or your child wants to know, okay, that's great, Mom. Are you coming to my basketball game? So those are also, pressures that we as women that try to hold everything together have to think about is the dynamics of being, a family person and keeping everything together. So no matter what career we have, no matter what age we are, there's different things that weave us together that we have to think about as women in order to take care of ourselves. And so I appreciate each of you for what you've shared. And so I want to give some final closing, and I'm going to give also a call to action because I like to give people something to take away and to ponder and to hopefully do and not just, leave and just go, okay, well, that was fine. No, we're going to give you something to do. So I want to thank you again. I also want to thank our sponsors again, the James Irvine Foundation, Matching and Discretionary Fund, and the East Bay Community Foundation. I also want to thank Sarah Harris and the Black Business Association for hosting us, as well as the entire Forgiving for Living board. I truly appreciate each and every one of them. So before we leave, I just want to offer a simple but powerful call to action. If you do nothing else, this is some recommendations, and some of this I was writing down as some of our panelists were speaking. And for example, like when Dr. Harrell was talking, she said, talk to your family members. Ask questions about your family history. Don't be shy or embarrassed to try to learn something that can help your future. Number 2, document it. Once you've learned something, write it down so that you can preserve it for future generations. Number 3, keep a personal health journal because sometimes you'll start to notice things that you won't pay attention to if you're not writing them down. You're like, oh, that lump got a little bigger, or, oh, I'm coughing now, or whatever it is, so that you can also then provide your healthcare provider with better information to better help you. And then also make self-care a priority and not an afterthought.
Yes.
Make your own well-being and self-care a priority and not an afterthought. So because one day someone will need the information that you are taking the time right now to journal that's going to help them with their life. When women take care of themselves, families are stronger, communities are stronger, and future generations will be better prepared to thrive. So again, thank you so much. And before we sign off, did anybody have a last minute something they want to say?
Make health a priority.
Amen.
That's what I would like to say.
Amen. Okay, well, thank you for joining us today. I am Coach Wendy, the Purpose Partner, wishing everyone good health, strength, and grace to live a well and whole life. And if you missed any of this, you can also find it on YouTube at BBA's, the Black Business Association's YouTube channel. So if you missed it, you can still go back and pick it up and see it there as well. So thank you so much. Until next time, God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.